Hello and welcome back to India on 99.94, your home of Indian cricket content. As always, I'm your host, Nikesh Ragani, BBC and SEN cricket commentator, alongside Sarah Warris of Wisden. And today, we've got a very special guest with us, one of the newest members of the 99.94 Brigade, all-round legend, the man of many, well, not many hairstyles, but many shirts. Wonderful head of hair as well, it has to be said. Mr. Bharat Sundaresan, how are you?
We're distant relatives now, aren't we? Distant
Are we?
cousins, like what? Yeah, I mean, we're 99.94 family, man. And it's so unfortunate that I logged on to this call a few minutes ago and I was so impolite. I didn't even introduce myself to Sarah. So, what better place than to do so on the podcast? Hi, Sarah. My name's Bharat.
Hi, I've been a huge fan of yours for many years, following you for many years, and our first interaction ever. So almost like a fangirl moment for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, no fangirling here. It's just, but imagine, right? Like our first introduction on a live podcast with the great Nikesh Rogani. What better place? Nobody could have dreamt this up.
Well, you know what's funny as well? I've never met Sarah in person before doing this podcast. So we jumped on for our first episode, had never been introduced, had never met, and just had to sort of rock up alongside Mr. Kimber on that occasion and get on with it. And we've built up this rapport, although I never got that kind of reception from Sarah. She didn't know who I was. She's obviously a big fan of yours. She didn't have a clue who I was. Hopefully she knows who I am now. And we're ready to kick off once again. Right. So, Bharat, the reason we've got you on, obviously, you want to plug your new podcast as well, which is great. Bharat Sundaresan and Mitchell Johnson, the Mitch Johnson podcast, which has just dropped on the 99.94 feed. You got a copy of his book there. You got it signed, didn't you, as well, today, which was great. I might have to send you one as well, actually, to get you to do the business for me. You've also got your Australia on 99.94 launching soon. But the reason we've got you on really is because you were at the MCG. Now, we've done the review podcast of India versus Pakistan. We recorded almost straight after the match. Emotions were still running high. It was just mad. It was crazy. It was mental. What the hell happened towards the end there? It will go down as one of the great all-time T20 matches, if not the greatest, certainly the greatest T20I match between these two nations at a World Cup. Just phenomenal. Virat Kohli, amazing. So many great performances. Some of the bowling from Pakistan was brilliant. Naseem Shah, Haris Rauf up until his final over as well. Just outstanding stuff, really, all around. Now that we've had time to process things, Bharat, we just want to sort of get a flavour of how things were for you. Are you over it for a start?
No, I don't think I'll ever be over it. And you know me, I'm pretty chilled out in life generally. Nothing gets me too excited or over the top. I am over the top with the way I look, but I'm pretty calm regardless of what happens in a cricket match. But there were times during that match, and not so much because of the cricket, because when you cover cricket for as long as I have, I sound like an old man. You kind of end up having seen a lot of most things you see on a cricket field, even though I never thought I'd see a left arm spinner being forced to bowl left arm seam up or left arm medium in the last over of an India Pakistan World Cup match. And I'm sure we'll come to that. But it was the atmosphere. We've seen India Pakistan matches. I've covered them in India, in England during the Champions Trophy, the World Cup. But this was just different. I just put it in my piece, which I just sent across now, where it almost felt like the anticipation had built up from the day this fixture was announced, not just in India and Pakistan, but even here. I remember speaking about this match last year, about what it would be like. And even I couldn't have imagined it being so special, so surreal. And leading up to it, leading into it, you almost felt like a couple of days out, the people of Melbourne, the city of Melbourne, had just like handed their keys to both India and Pakistan and said, over to you, put on a show. And they in turn said, you know what, we'll put on a show you've never seen before. We'll put on the greatest show you've ever seen. And that's what it turned out to be. And even before I got to Melbourne, I took a 6 a.m. flight from Sydney yesterday. 80% of the people on that flight were either Indian or Pakistani. Uh, and all the chatter, some people in their Indian jerseys already at 5:30 a.m. I made sure that I would not go close to them at 7 p.m. And for obvious reasons. And it was just about it. The chatter was just about that match. So when we landed in Melbourne, the air hostess said, "Welcome to Melbourne and enjoy the cricket." And at that point, one section of the flight broke into Pakistan Zindabad chants, and the other section started screaming "India Jeetega." All this on board a flight, a Sydney Melbourne flight. It's unheard of, and that continued on as you approached game time. I left my hotel at around 4 p.m. And the streets were filled with Indian and Pakistani flags, or cars with Indian and Pakistani flags sticking out, no traffic rules being obeyed. It could easily have been Mumbai or Karachi. And honestly, at one point, the Uber driver turned around and said, "Sir, do you want me to drive like we would back home?" And I said, "Yeah, that's the only way I'm getting to the MCG." And that is honestly the only way I got to the MCG on time. And once you got there as well, I mean, there were 93,200 people inside, but there would have been at least 70,000 people outside who maybe never got in. As mighty Pakistani flags, mighty Indian flags. It was all just, you couldn't have scripted this. It was just so special. And also, the national anthem. I've, of course, heard the Indian national anthem millions of times in my life. And at different cricket grounds, it is a moment that kind of whether you are big on national anthems or not. I'm not personally, but you kind of, whatever national anthem plays, you know what I'm talking about, Nikesh. You kind of stand and just listen. You just want that moment to go on without any distraction, any disturbance. But here, to hear what I'm guessing 60,000 odd Indians sing Jana Gana Mana, I had goosebumps, which says a lot. It was quite. I was on air on commentary, and it made you a little emotional. Even though you weren't wearing an Indian jersey and standing outside, that was a special moment, and it felt equally special listening to the Pakistani national anthem as well. Honestly, so yeah, I mean, I think I built up what it was like to get to the ground, and after that, we know how the cricket panned out, but as special as the cricket was, so was everything around it.
And Sarah, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, just about, do you think that it became the match, like one of the most memorable T20 matches, because someone like Kohli was there taking India through? He had his struggles and all that he's been through in the last 2.5 years, and then to come out at possibly the greatest stage ever, and then to do what he did. After the match, he did say that they were struggling in the middle. So just how good was Kohli's knock? Were his struggles, because of his own like his own flaws, or do you think that the pitch was a little tough? The Pakistan bowling was that good. Just his struggles in the middle and how he was able to make that comeback, and the match became the match because of Kohli's knock. Because no one else has the ability to unite the whole world like he does right now, I think. So just something on Kohli and Kohli's knock and his struggles and how he managed to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, all those things that you mentioned. The pitch was, and also it has a lot to do with what time of the year this tournament is being played. There have been two major ICC men's events in Australia. Both the '92 World Cup and the 2015 World Cup happened in February, March, which is like proper summer, and the pitches are tired, much flatter. So generally, when you have a white ball match at the MCG, a one day or a T20, you'll see there's like a proper sheen on that pitch. It plays very, very fair, and it's really good to bat on. But yesterday, and they're drop-in pitches as well in Melbourne, as you know. So it looked more like a Sheffield Shield wicket. It was fresh. It had that freshness. There were green patches on it if you looked at it closely. And this is the first competitive cricket match being played at the MCG after the AFL Grand Final, which took place a month ago. So no surprises that the ball was doing all sorts for Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Arshdeep Singh. So in a way, it was good for India to win the toss, and field, because who knows how this game would have gone if those Pakistani seamers had first help of this or first use of these conditions. And to come to Virat's struggles, I think the situation had a lot to do with it. 31 for 4, and Haris Rauf and Naseem Shah were bowling so well. It was a case of he couldn't take any risks. If he gets out, the match is over. They couldn't even get anywhere close to that Pakistan total. So he had no choice but to kind of play himself in and back his ability not just to hit those boundaries, but to manipulate the field. I mean, the MCG is a massive playing field, as you know, especially the square boundaries. And there was and even though we will talk about the sixes towards the end, I thought he controlled that innings beautifully after, say, the 8th or the 9th over, once his strike rate started picking up. I think that's where the rhythm came into being. Of course, the 20-over run helped, where they went after Mohammad Nawaz, which is so crucial because that led to the whole Babar Azam gamble of keeping him for the 20th over, pushing it or taking that chance of like this Russian roulette where you knew Nawaz was waiting. Like how long could you hide him before he had to face up to Kohli and Pandya. So I think that had a lot to do with how he went about his innings. And yeah, I mean, of course, towards the end, what he did, you correctly said, being able to unite the world. Very few Indian cricketers or few international cricketers in the history of the game have been able to do that. And he does have this special place in the hearts of Australian people. I mean, there's this special love for him. I've never seen, and Australians love special players coming from overseas and doing well here. I mean, they love Brian Lara. They speak about this great Sir Garfield Sobers like he's a god. But Virat Kohli is in that class when it comes to Australians. Like the way they celebrate him over here. I think they celebrate him at times more over here than they do in India, which is kind of strange to say when you're talking about an Australian audience. And that all played into the fact that he was at the MCG and, he soaked in all that pressure. And then, it could have all gone pear-shaped even if he didn't hit those 2 sixes. 28 needed of 8 balls. For him to produce those 2 shots under pressure against the best bowler on the day, Haris Rauf, who the Indians could not lay a bat on him, and to do what he did just tells you, like, my favorite or the one expression I use a lot with Virat Kohli is he's got that genius gene. Like, once he switches that button on, he can do stuff that only he can do. And also, like you saw in his reaction, he does these things and then he's kind of gobsmacked with how he himself did it. That's when you realize you're operating or you're looking at someone operating at a higher level than just normal people.
Absolutely. You touched on legacy there, and we're going to continue that legacy chat after we take a short break here.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
So Bharat, just looking at his sort of legacy in T20 World Cups, let's start with that. Average of 518 when he's involved, when he's not out in chases in T20 internationals. 18 times in T20 internationals he's been not out, and India have gone on to win all of those 18 matches as well. I think that was part of the reason that I and many people that I knew just felt that, I mean, we didn't even know the stat at the time, but I just had a feeling that I can't remember India finishing a match with Kohli batting second, chasing, being not out, and India don't win the game. It just doesn't happen, does it? I mean, his legacy as one of the greatest finishers the game has ever seen in white ball cricket just grows and grows. And in terms of the aura that he has internationally, you mentioned the sort of fanfare that he has in Australia. I mean, there was always fanfare for Sachin, but not in the same way, was there? Because Virat is almost one of their own with the attitude and the aggression and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Sachin, they were just in awe of this genius who just took them to pieces time and time again. All those battles with Shane Warne and Glenn McGrath over the years, they respected him immensely, Sachin. But Virat, to the Aussies and to the rest of the world really is on a different level because, all right, in some countries you either love him or you hate him, like in England here, there are people who just hate his attitude. But generally, I think people just love that aggression and the genius as well. And that legacy just continues to grow, doesn't it?
You're absolutely right about the comparison between Virat and Sachin Tendulkar because they admired him. They almost worshipped Sachin Tendulkar here whenever he played. Very similar to, like I said, a Brian Lara or a Gary Sobers. But with Virat Kohli, he might be the only non-Australian cricketer who they always look at and feel that he could have fit into any era or an Australian team from any era. They just feel like he's more Australian. Like a couple of hours ago, I was doing some radio. That was the question again, who do you want from the Australian team if we want Virat in the Australian? Like, if we want to do a little barter, who would you want? Because he just fits in, just this attitude to life, I guess. Because if you look at Australians generally, they are outdoorsy, they are adventurous. And I think Virat has that. And having been fortunate enough to have followed his career, interviewed him many times and interacted with him about non-cricketing things as well, he's got that curiosity about everything else that's happening around him. Which is again, which kind of caters to that Australian mindset. And that's what, he plays it fair, but still he has some great friends in the Australian side. Look, whether it's David Warner or Glenn Maxwell or Adam Zampa, or even others going back in time. And the great late Philip Hughes was his good friend as well. So I think that's what really makes him special. And again, that innings the other night just proved why a lot of people have said that this is the Virat Kohli era of international cricket, not just Indian cricket. We are just in the Virat Kohli era. And it'll always be called the Virat Kohli era for not just what he does on the field, but what he represents on and off the field.
Yeah, just when he was struggling the 2.5 years, when did you ever doubt that it's over for him or he won't be able to make this strong of a comeback? I know in hindsight it's very easy to say, yeah, I always knew he could come back. But then because a few months ago we had a 4 episode, and I said then on 99.94 that Virat Kohli, I wouldn't pick Virat Kohli in my T20I side right now. So, did you ever think that, okay, it's over for him? Because, that after that peak, such a big this downfall for him, like we've never seen it. We weren't used to it. We didn't know how to cope with it. We didn't know if he could ever come back. So, were you surprised, and just, that importance of the mental health break which he took? He said he didn't touch a bat for 3 weeks. First time in his life, maybe he didn't touch a bat. So how important was that break for him, just having family around? And he has a daughter. So he's spoken a lot about, how perspective has changed, how things have changed. So yeah, what was it like for you a few months ago?
No, again, I think the one thing we can't do just on the basis of that one innings is say that Virat Kohli's back or Virat Kohli is going to be back to the top. It's just how it pans out in sport, right? Nobody can stay at their peak for forever. Could he find another peak at this stage of his career? Probably. But I don't think the innings on Sunday night proves that or shows that he's back. Or that he'd gone somewhere, right? It just shows that even when someone like Virat, or when you are like Virat Kohli, even when you're struggling, there are nights, there are days where you can kind of tap into that almost supernatural, superhuman power that you're blessed with to produce the kind of knock he did. I mean, let's compare him with an MS Dhoni. Obviously, MS Dhoni has not been what he was like for at least the last 7 or 8 years. But there are still days or in certain circumstances or scenarios, he can still pull it off, right? I think that's what it is about Virat Kohli. Basically, what that innings on Sunday proves is that, like I said earlier, he's got that extra gear or that extra level that nobody else has probably had in the game. Others have, Shane Warne, like for example, very similar, right? He could, even when he was in his 40s, he would come and produce magic, right? Does not mean that he would come back and play Test cricket. So for those who felt like he should, like yourself, that he shouldn't be in the T20 side, it was completely justified. He went through a lean patch, and that's just how it is. It's basically, I guess, some way credit to the selectors or to Rohit Sharma, who kind of felt what we're talking about now. That is the Indian team better off with a Virat Kohli in it, or is it better off with the team without Virat Kohli? Right? It always seems like it's better off with Virat Kohli. We're not talking about a Virat Kohli who's 38, 39 here. He's still just 33, 34. So he's still, at the sort of that age where batters peak a lot. Right? So we'll wait and watch whether this is the beginning of a new chapter in his career. But again, another thing that stands out of this innings is he played this innings when he wasn't in the greatest of form, or it didn't come on the back of him having made a lot of runs. He isn't in dream form like he was in, say, 2014 or 2016. This has come at a point when he was struggling. Even in this very innings, like you said, Sarah, he was struggling. And that almost adds to how special it was.
Indeed. And the thing that I will always, when Virat Kohli retires, and hopefully it's not for a few years yet, we want to see a lot more runs from him on the international stage. But when he eventually does hang up his bat, we're going to look back at those innings in Australia, I think, with the most memories. You hark back to 2014, 2015. And Bharat, we've both been lucky enough to watch him score runs and memorable runs in various different countries, in different conditions. But that 2014, 2015 Test series, for example, was absolute peak Kohli. Those 400s when he'd just taken over the captaincy, and that sort of new aggression that he brought to the Test team after the retirement of MS Dhoni. And the fact that he made those runs the other night at the MCG, in front of the Shane Warne stand, at the home of the late, great Shane Warne, who was a big, massive fan of Kohli. And Kohli, okay, it wasn't the most aggressive innings to start with, but the way he finished and the grit and determination he showed, and it was almost like a hark back to those great Australian cricketers that have graced that turf in the past. How fitting was it just to do it at the MCG in front of that Shane Warne stand and all those memories that holds?
No, it had to be Virat Kohli, right? Like I described the whole scene, the setting. I laid it out for you guys, what it felt like to be at the MCG on Sunday night. And if someone had to do a star turn, someone had to be the headliner, it just had to be Virat Kohli. It was inevitable that it would be him. I mean, he's always loved the big moments. He's always been a big stage player. And you're right. He hit those sixes while facing the Shane Warne stand. It almost felt poetic. It almost felt like Shane Warne was watching him when he hit that six. Where it says the Shane Warne stand, the first six, that special six of Haris Rauf, it would have gone maybe 200 yards to the left of where it says Shane Warne, in that direction anyway. So you're absolutely right. I mean, it just added to the whole, and like both of you said, it would still have been special even if India hadn't won. It would have been special even if, say, Virat Kohli had gotten out at some point, or Hardik had got out earlier and India had lost. But it just has now become the greatest spectacle ever because of what Virat Kohli did, and because it was Virat Kohli who did it.
Yeah.
Right, Bharat, on that note, we'll just take a short break, and then we'll come back off the back of that, and we can kick off with a couple of more questions to Bharat.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app, and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
Yeah, just the six, like the six, you spoke about the six. Just tell us, you were there, you saw that six of Haris Rauf. How was it? We saw the video that was uploaded by Sen Radio, and all the commentators were just in awe. And can you just relive that six again? Because just that presence of mind to hit a six, which was possibly 60 meters, and not go square leg for a longer boundary. Just how was it like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've now seen a lot of special things happen on the cricket field as a fan, as a journalist, as a commentator now these days. But those two sixes, and especially that first one that you spoke about, I was thinking about it the other day. I think when I do move on from this world, that'll be one of those memories which will stick with me. And I'm not even trying to exaggerate here. It was just, and considering everything, and considering that moment where he just had to do it. And that's, again, we keep touching on it. That's why he's that special being almost, because he can do it. When the whole world is watching and expecting you to do that thing, and to do it. And because it came off Haris Rauf, it had to come off Haris Rauf. If he had done that even of Shaheen Afridi, I don't know whether we would have been talking about it the way we are now. Because Shaheen Afridi, just coming back from injury, didn't look at his best. If he had done it of Naseem Shah, we would have said, yeah, young fast bowler, came under pressure bowling to Virat Kohli. This was Haris Rauf, the best T20 fast bowler in the last 2 years. This was Haris Rauf at his adopted home ground, the MCG. This was Haris Rauf on a night where he had looked unplayable, and for Virat Kohli to produce that shot. And like you said, presence of mind, the ability to generate that much power to hit it so far. Like, it's a shortish boundary at the MCG, but he cleared it by a country mile. Like, it went a long way beyond the boundary. Again, it's just only Virat Kohli could have done it. And to the extent that after he did it, Virat Kohli couldn't believe that Virat Kohli had done it, nor could Hardik Pandya at the other end.
Yeah, there was that six, and then there was the other one off the final delivery of that Haris Rauf over. And up until that point, I mean, India had looked dead and buried for quite some time, really. At certain points, 48 needed off the last three, and then eventually they get a decent over off Shaheen, and then Haris Rauf comes on to bowl, still 31 needed off the final two. First four deliveries are pretty much bang on from Haris Rauf, and then bang, bang, those two sixes. That reaction from Hardik Pandya at the other end, I mean, the way they charged into each other, and, as I mentioned last time, there'll be a lot of Hindi lip readers who will know exactly what they were sort of saying at that moment as well. Lots of expletives and just really G'd up, almost like NFL players charging into each other after they'd just scored a touchdown. There was that, which just shows how pumped they were. There was also the fact that after the game, Kohli was talking about how Hardik was basically calming his nerves out there in the middle, which is a very un-Hardik Pandya-like thing to do, but has been actually Hardik Pandya's character maybe since taking over as captain of the Gujarat Titans in the IPL, that extra responsibility. He's now a father, of course. He's a married man. He's mellowed a bit in life. He's become more mature, and it was a very mature effort. So a little bit on you from Hardik, and also just the camaraderie around the team. I mean, it seems like a team that is so together with moments like that at the moment. And you've been around many Indian sides over the last few years, and this just seems like a special group that's very together.
Oh, it very much is. And I was fortunate to bump into a lot of them and the entire team yesterday at Melbourne Airport. And some happy reunions. I was seeing some of them after a long time, so that was good. But you're right, just seeing them, a lot of them with their families, it just seems like a very settled group, and it always adds when you see little kids running around, and one cricketer running after the other cricketer's kids, and the wives getting along. And you're right, it just feels like one big happy family. And obviously they had the spring in their stride, which comes from an Indian team which has beaten Pakistan the previous night. But yeah, Hardik Pandya, look, I think the time when I realized that he's really matured was 2 years ago when India came here and played that remarkable Test series. But he was part of that one-day series, and there were a couple of finishes in the one-dayer and the T20 where he really showed off how much he's come of age, not just as a batter, but also as a person, the maturity that you spoke about, that comes from fatherhood, that comes from being in a marriage or in a relationship. And we saw that yesterday as well, or Sunday night as well. The way before the explosion started, there were at least 3 or 4 times he just hit the gap, played the field, and they picked up 2 runs or 3 runs, which is when, like I said earlier, when him and Kohli started doing that, that's when things started moving. There was some fluidity to the innings, and then the explosion began against Nawaz. And yeah, I mean, I think he spoke to the media after the game, and he said he's generally pretty cool and calm on the field. But when that second six was hit, he just started screaming. He said, "I started screaming like a fan," because at the end of the day, he also grew up kind of watching Virat Kohli for the first 5-6 years of Virat Kohli's career, right? And even though he's now become an integral part of this side, a IPL winning captain, in that moment, I think he just became Hardik Pandya, the kid, or he could have been one of any of those 93,200 people around the ground just watching Virat Kohli do what he did. And that's the emotion that came through. And yeah, you can't forget about his role in this. I mean, if he gets out at some point during that innings, again, who knows, right? You're left with Dinesh Karthik and look, Ashwin and Bhuvneshwar Kumar, but not a power hitting tail. And that the required run rate was growing. So, yeah, I mean, his hand was very crucial, not just in India winning, but also, like you said, keeping Virat Kohli calm.
Yeah, you spoke about Ashwin, just that leave, just again that being smart enough to know that okay, just leave it for a wide, and that brought down the equation, and scores were level at that point. And yeah, just that leave, like, what were the emotions before the last over? Nawaz came on to bowl, then Hardik Pandya got out, Dinesh Karthik got stumped, that wide, no ball, there was a bias, like there was everything in that last one over. What was the emotion? I know we've spoken a lot about emotions and everything, but that match was just all emotions and everything. So, and were you surprised that they had to keep Nawaz for the last over? They couldn't bowl him earlier because then the match could have been over earlier. So, but just the emotions around what happened and transpired.
Look, first on Ashwin, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this. She feels like I borrow all my lines from her. She's not a journalist, don't worry. So, but she is very intelligent. So she says stuff and I quietly, sneakily listen to it and write it down. So she was watching the match back home in Adelaide, and she said, and you guys will get this, our Ashwin batted like a first ranker in school. Like, he just walked out and did something that you expect a front bencher to do. The way he just marked his guard and walked in line of the ball. It was wide anyway, but just the way he kind of accentuated how wide it was. It takes a very smart and yet a highly intellectual person to do that in under pressure. Last ball. Think about it, right? That's the moment, if you are an Indian who wants to play cricket, or even if you're just an Indian, that's all of us, I'm sure, at some point have had a dream of winning a match against Pakistan of the last ball. And you are in the moment, and everything in your instinct is telling you to go for the ball. And whatever the line of the ball was, he could have tried a paddle sweep or whatever, got some pad on it, India lose, or anything could have happened. But to have the presence of mind and the intellect to just move in just tells you everything you need to know about Ashwin. And then to keep the calm again, to just bunt that ball over mid-off and not try anything extravagant, again tells you about why Ashwin is considered arguably one of the most intelligent cricketers to have played for India. But the last over drama, I think it's just Pakistan panicking, and that's the beauty of having Virat Kohli. I mean, you said, Nikesh, earlier, what makes him such a special finisher. It's because he plays on the opposition's mind. He makes them do things that they're not comfortable with. And look, Mohammad Nawaz bowled 2 very good overs. He went only for 9 runs. Then he goes for 20 runs. People go for runs in T20 cricket. It's not like Akshar Patel, who bowled 1 over and went for 21. So if Pakistan had just asked him to do what he does best, which is bowl left arm spin, he's not some young kid. He's played enough cricket now. Maybe they would have still lost, but at least he would have been comfortable doing what he was doing. But then Babar Azam lost control, let Mohammad Rizwan kind of take over proceedings briefly. And then they decide to do this bizarre thing where Mohammad Rizwan stands a few yards behind and they get him to kind of run in and bowl like Ijaz Ahmed or Inzamam ul Haq used to, just darts balls in. There was under that pressure, there's no way you could have expected him to land every ball. So credit to him that he got 2 wickets. Honestly, Mohammad Nawaz deserves a big pat on the back for being asked to do something he's never done before. It's almost like the only other time I've seen that happen is when Manoj Prabhakar bowled off spin to Sri Lanka in Delhi in '96, where someone comes in as a spinner or a fast bowler, and because of the circumstances is forced to do something he or she is not used to. And that's what happened. So he completely lost control towards the end. Shadab Khan was running in from deep mid-wicket. It was almost club cricket. He's asking Babar Azam to run to deep mid-wicket and says, I'm going to take over the captaincy. These scenes generally don't play out in international cricket, but they did because of what Virat and Hardik did, and because Virat was just in there and putting that pressure on them.
Yeah, absolute madness, and a day that, you know, Indian cricket fans and even Pakistanis, you know, will never forget, really. Wouldn't we just love to see more India versus Pakistan cricket outside of World Cups? And, you know, I mean, we've talked, Bharat, about those memories that certainly I've got of 04, 05, 06, 07. Those, they were playing each other every year, weren't they? Tours back and forth, and that friendship series it all started with in 04. Just fantastic scenes, close games, really good cricket. Legendary players. We'd just love to see that once again. It doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, but we can all live in hope. So look, that was India-Pakistan. We're still quite not, you know, we've not quite come down from that. We hope the players have those. So just before we wrap up on this one, next up, of course, the Netherlands on Thursday for India. You'd expect them to get through that one without too many issues, although the Netherlands have got, you know, several decent players in their side, lots of first-class experience in there as well. What do India, how do they sort of approach that game, and then South Africa on the following game on Sunday as well, given the fact that they've just had this highly emotional game against Pakistan as well? What would be the process going into Thursday first?
No, I mean, I was speaking to some of my colleagues who are in Sydney right now, and apparently it was, even though these are all optional net sessions, it's travel, net, practice, play. Everyone from Virat to Rohit turned up, and it was like a full-fledged practice session. All of them batted. So it's, in a way, it's good that they have a game like Netherlands and not another high-profile game like South Africa right after this, because, like you said, it is a challenge to get yourself up from or down or up or wherever you are after that performance, and you are on a high, right? Like, because of the result, but also just the whole atmosphere. So I'm not saying that they will take Netherlands lightly. It's a good sign that all of them are out practicing, that it's nobody wants to kind of just soak in that glory and stay in that position. The tournament has just started, don't forget. So it's good to have a team like Netherlands to face. Like you said, they're a plucky team. A lot of them have played cricket in Australia, but it'll set them up nicely for when they come to Perth to face South Africa. And don't forget that result last night, the rained-off game between South Africa and Zimbabwe, has opened this group up. And South Africa, for no doing of theirs, are under immense pressure. And I think they have a match to go before this, or maybe not. I'm not sure about the schedule. But either way, that's going to be a crucial game. And if you are Pakistan, you want India to beat South Africa and just like sail through, and then you just bank on other results to get through. So yeah, a lot riding on that one. But before that, it's good to go to Sydney, where India love playing cricket. They have some really happy memories of playing in Sydney the last 2 years, or the last 2 tours they've come here. So it'll be a good place. You know, a lot of happy vibes at the SCG, and a good game to like just set them up for that next big game.
Sarah, anything you want to add before we wrap?
I think that's it. We can keep talking, but it'll never be enough. But we have a timeline.
Yeah, we might have to dedicate a whole series to Virat Kohli at some stage. But Bazza, or am I allowed to call you Bazza? Is it Baz? Is it Bharat, as the Aussies say?
Bharat. Well, there's also my alter ego, Barry Sanderson.
Barry Sanderson. Wow, I like that. I've called you a lot worse in press boxes over the years.
That is true,
well.
and we shall not repeat.
And you've reciprocated as well. So.
In much worse fashion. So yeah.
Right. Well, Bharat, thank you very much for joining us here on India on 99.94. Best of luck with obviously all your SEN commentary that you're doing, your writing that you're doing for CricBuzz over at the T20 World Cup, and of course your new podcast, Mitch Johnson podcast, has dropped on the 99.94 feed. So do subscribe to that one, have a listen, and then keep an eye out for Australia on 99.94 as well. But Bharat, for now, thank you very much, and see you soon, hopefully.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, guys. And I'm sure we'll do this more often now that we are part of the same family. Hopefully it's not a quarreling family. We'll have all these family get-togethers and gatherings that we'll see each other at.
Hopefully once India wins the World Cup.
Well, now that West Indies are knocked out, Maybe India will win.
Yeah.
Your team, your adopted team. Thanks, Bharat. Cheers.
Thank you.